probably right. Hello, polygamy. It's one of those topics, isn't it? A bit like mayonnaise or Nicolas Cage's career. People tend to have very strong, often contradictory opinions about it. Now, polygamy laws, the actual rules governing who can marry whom and how many of them, vary wildly around the world. It's a complete legal mosh pit. In some places, it's as normal as afternoon tea. In others, it's a one-way ticket to a very serious conversation with a judge. So, we're going to take a look at this global legal tapestry, this patchwork quilt of I do, and oh God, I do again. This isn't just a simple case of legal or illegal. Oh no, that would be far too easy. The reality is a labyrinth of cultural norms, religious doctrines, and legal loopholes big enough to drive a family-sized minivan through. Some countries have specific laws allowing it, others just sort of look the other way. And then you have places where it's not only illegal but can land you in some serious hot water, which frankly is probably already overflowing if you have multiple spouses. It's a mess, a fascinating, complicated global mess. So, to make sense of this matrimonial chaos, let's break it down by region. We'll take a whirlwind tour of the planet, stopping off at each continent to see how they handle the rather tricky business of plural marriage. Think of it as a morbidly bureaucratic episode of House Hunters International. But instead of looking for granite countertops, we're looking for the legal capacity to have more than one mother-in-law, which, let's be honest, sounds like an absolute nightmare. Let's begin. Let's start in Africa, a continent so vast and diverse that trying to generalize its laws is like trying to summarize the internet with a single grunt. And yet, here we are. In many countries across Northwest and Central Africa, polygyny, that's one man with multiple wives, isn't just legal. It's a deeply embedded cultural and religious practice. Take a look at a country like Algeria, or Niger, or the Republic of Congo. Here, the civil code explicitly permits a man to marry up to 4 wives, often with certain conditions, like proving he can financially support them all, which is a bit like asking a juggler to prove he can afford all the chainsaws he's about to juggle. It's a high bar, and frankly, a terrifying one. Then you have countries like Kenya, which in 2014 passed a law formally legalizing polygamy for men without requiring the consent of the existing wife, a move that prompted female parliamentarians to storm out in protest. You can see their point. Imagine coming home to find your husband has not only bought that ridiculous giant television you told him not to, but he's also acquired a whole new wife to watch it with him. It's a bold domestic strategy, to say the least. Similarly, in Nigeria, polygamy is legal at the federal level for Muslims, who are the majority in the north, creating a fascinating dual system where an act can be a crime in one part of the country for one person, but perfectly legal for their neighbor. It's a legal Schrodinger's cat if the cat also had several wives. But it's not a uniform picture. Move further south or look at specific nations, and the story changes completely. In South Africa, for instance, post-apartheid law recognizes customary polygamous marriages, a nod to traditional practices, but civil marriages must be monogamous. It's a legal balancing act. Meanwhile, in countries like Ethiopia or Mozambique, polygamy is officially illegal. And yet, it's still widely, if informally, practiced. The law says no, but tradition often says, yeah, but what if we just did it anyway and didn't tell the government? This creates a shadow system where women in these unions have absolutely no legal rights or protections, which is the absolute worst of both worlds. The state offers no recognition, leaving them completely vulnerable. It's a legal fiction with devastatingly real consequences. Alright, let's pivot to the Middle East and Asia, where the intersection of religion and law is, to put it mildly, front and center. In the vast majority of the Middle East, polygamy is not only legal but is often enshrined in personal status laws derived from Islamic Sharia law, which permits a man to have up to 4 wives. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Iran have legal frameworks that explicitly allow for this. Of course, there are usually conditions. The husband might have to demonstrate financial capacity and a commitment to treat all wives equally, a principle that, in practice, is about as easy to achieve as folding a fitted sheet perfectly. It's a noble goal, but the execution is often a lumpy, frustrating mess. Moving into Asia, the picture becomes even more complex. Yes, many Muslim-majority nations like Indonesia, Pakistan, and Bangladesh permit polygamy for their Muslim citizens. though often with more hurdles. In Indonesia, for example, a man needs consent from his existing wife or wives and permission from a court, which must be convinced there's a good reason, like the first wife being unable to have children or fulfill her duties. This turns a deeply personal matter into a bureaucratic tribunal, which sounds just delightful. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, the laws vary by state, creating a patchwork of regulations that can be a real headache. It's like trying to assemble IKEA furniture, where every state gives you a different Allen key, and none of them quite fit. But then you have the massive parts of Asia where polygamy is a firm no. In China, it's been illegal since the 1950s. In Japan and South Korea, it's completely out of the question. And then there's India, which is a whole other level of complexity. Polygamy is illegal for Hindus, Christians, and Parsis, under a common civil code, but it is permissible for Muslims. This legal carve-out is one of the most contentious political issues in the country, a flashpoint in the debate over a uniform civil code. And in countries like Thailand or the Philippines, while polygamy is technically illegal for most, it may be practiced within specific communities or simply exist in a legal gray area, unrecognized but tolerated. It's a classic case of the law on the books versus the reality on the ground. And now, to Europe, the continent that gave us the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and, well, the Eurovision Song Contest. When it comes to polygamy, Europe's answer is a resounding continent-wide no. Or, more accurately, nein, non, niet, and absolutely not. Are you insane? From the United Kingdom to Germany, from Sweden to Spain, bigamy, marrying someone while already married to another person, is a criminal offense. The entire legal framework of modern Europe is built on the foundation of monogamous marriage. Trying to register a second marriage would be like, trying to pay your taxes in monopoly money. The system is simply not designed to process it and will likely end with you being escorted from the premises. This legal prohibition is deeply rooted in centuries of Judeo-Christian tradition and secular civil law. The idea of one person, one spouse is as fundamental to European legal identity as, honestly, complaining about the weather is to British culture. So, if you're a citizen of a European country, the path is clear, one spouse at a time, thank you very much. End of story. Except, of course, it isn't. Because immigration exists, and this is where Europe's firm stance gets a little squishy. The continent has had to grapple with the awkward question of what to do when a family arrives from a country where polygamous marriage is perfectly legal. Do you just, pretend the second or third wife doesn't exist? This is the hypocrisy at the heart of the issue. While you can't a polygamous marriage in Europe, some countries, out of a pragmatic need to deal with reality, will recognize foreign polygamous marriages for limited purposes. This can be for things like social security benefits, inheritance, or tax purposes. In the United Kingdom, for example, wives in a valid foreign polygamous marriage may be entitled to a share of their husband's state pension. Germany has had court cases dealing with the inheritance rights of multiple wives. It's a legal and ethical tightrope walk. They're essentially saying, we find this practice fundamentally wrong and it's illegal here, but also, here's the paperwork you'll need to fill out for your joint tax assessment. It's an uncomfortable compromise born from a clash of global legal systems. Let's cross the Atlantic to the Americas, where the legal attitude towards polygamy has historically been even more hostile than in Europe. In the United States, polygamy isn't just illegal, it's actually part of a national origin story of sorts. The late 19th century was marked by a fierce federal crackdown on the polygamous practices of early Mormons in the Utah Territory. This culminated in the Supreme Court case in 1878, which upheld anti-bigamy laws, essentially stating that while the government can't regulate your beliefs, it can absolutely regulate your actions, especially if those actions involve collecting spouses like their Pokemon. That ruling set the tone for the entire country for over a century. Every single state in the United States has laws making bigamy a crime. The same goes for Canada, and pretty much every country in Central and South America. From Mexico to Argentina, the legal code is clear. One spouse is the limit. The cultural and legal norm is so strong that polygamy is often seen not just as a crime, but as a bizarre and archaic practice. It's the legal equivalent of showing up to a dinner party in a full suit of armor. It's not just against the rules, it's profoundly weird to everyone else in the room. This uniform illegality across two massive continents is, on the surface, incredibly straightforward. You just can't do it. However, as always, there are wrinkles. Back in Utah, the historic heart of American polygamy, the state decriminalized the practice in 2020. Now this is crucial. It did not it. You still can't get multiple marriage licenses. But they downgraded the offense from a felony to a simple infraction, akin to a traffic ticket, as long as it's between consenting adults and there's no fraud or abuse involved. The goal was to encourage people in polygamous communities, who were living in the shadows, to report crimes like domestic abuse without fear of being prosecuted themselves. It's a fascinating public policy experiment. And, similar to Europe, both the United States and Canada may, in very rare and specific immigration cases, have to deal with the reality of a pre-existing foreign polygamous marriage, usually leading to a legal migraine for everyone involved. Finally, let's journey to Oceania, the region of vast oceans and, legally speaking, a pretty vast opposition to polygamy. In the two largest countries, Australia and New Zealand, the law is crystal clear, much like the waters around Fiji, but far less fun to dive into. Polygamy is illegal. Full stop. The Australian Marriage Act of 1961 explicitly defines marriage as the union of two people, to the exclusion of all others. If you try to get married while you're already married, you're committing bigamy, which is a criminal offense. It's the same story in New Zealand. The legal systems are inherited from British common law, and they carry that same baked-in preference for monogamy. For the vast majority of people in the region, that's the beginning and end of the conversation. The cultural norm aligns with the legal statute, and the issue rarely comes up in mainstream discourse. It's simply not a thing. The legal and social infrastructure is entirely built around the concept of a couple, not a throuple, or a four-plea, or a whatever plea. Trying to navigate social services, banking, or school forms with more than one spouse would be an administrative nightmare of epic proportions. The paperwork alone is enough to make anyone commit to a life of solitude, let alone monogamy. But, and you knew there was a but coming, there is an important exception, and it lies with Indigenous communities. In Australia, while you cannot legally enter into a new polygamous marriage, there is some recognition of traditional Aboriginal marriages, including plural relationships, for certain purposes. This is often in the context of Social Security law, where a multiple relationship can be recognized, meaning benefits might be split between partners. It's not a full-throated endorsement. It's a pragmatic acknowledgement of long-standing cultural practices that predate the arrival of British law by tens of thousands of years. It's another example of a secular legal system trying, sometimes awkwardly, to make space for cultural realities that don't fit neatly into its predefined boxes. So there you have it. A quick spin around the globe reveals a legal landscape for polygamy that is anything but uniform. It's a spectrum. On one end, you have regions where it is a legally recognized and culturally integrated part of society, particularly in parts of Africa and the Middle East. On the other end, you have Europe and the Americas, where it is strictly prohibited, a criminal act rooted in a deep legal and cultural tradition of monogamy. And in the middle, you have this vast, murky gray area filled with exceptions, ongoing legal debates, decriminalization experiments, and the quiet, often difficult, recognition of foreign or customary unions. The takeaway here is not about whether polygamy is right or wrong. That's a whole other can of worms, and frankly, a much longer video. The point is that the laws governing it are a mirror, reflecting the deeply held values, religious beliefs, and colonial histories of each society. In some places, the law is designed to uphold religious doctrine. In others, it's a tool for nation building and creating a uniform civic identity. And in many places, it's a site of conflict, where modern secular states are forced to confront the pre-existing traditional practices of their own people, or the customs of new immigrants. Ultimately, understanding these diverse legal approaches does more than just tell us who can marry whom. It helps us see how culture, tradition, and religion are not just abstract concepts. They are powerful forces that actively shape and are shaped by the legal systems that govern our most intimate relationships. The world is a complicated place, and nothing makes that clearer than the laws we create to manage love, family, and commitment. It's a global, legal, and very human story. Thanks for watching.